I lost my mom to AIDS. I also had to grow up really quickly. So I remember there was a time where she in fact tried to kill me in my sleep, because she thought that I was an intruder in her house.
Sure.
My aunt came back and took me again. A small town, Viljoenskroon, where when white people see you walking together, a black child and white kids, it's frowned upon.
Welcome to Season 6 of the Sisters in Conversation podcast. I'm your host, Tiisetso Mthembu. I'm an attorney by profession and the founder of a platform called Sister-in-Law, which is a platform dedicated to empowering women through legal education. Over the years, we have been running this podcast to highlight the stories of Black women in the legal profession in an attempt to share their individual journeys, to celebrate them, and to also highlight some of the challenges that they've faced in practice or in their respective areas of work. I hope you will continue to join me on this amazing journey as we learn more and more about what the legal profession entails and also get to just learn about each other as women. If you're new to the show, I'm encouraging you to subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. And most importantly, please do engage. Leave reviews so that I can know what I'm doing wrong, how I can improve, and which guests you'd like to see being featured on the show. If you haven't subscribed, right now is the perfect opportunity to do so. On today's episode, I'm joined by an old favorite of mine, Tiisetso Mthembu. So we did our articles together many moons ago. I was her senior candidate attorney.
You just had to
as I loved calling myself that. When we met, she was doing her first year of articles. And I was a senior candidate attorney, as I've said. But over the years, she's grown so beautifully, and I've invited her here today to share her story with us. So Tiisetso, formerly known as Tiisetso Rapasa, who's now Mthembu. I did a good job with you guys. Hey, yo, Kihudisitse mo. Tiisetso Mthembu, thank you so much for honoring the invitation and for coming to share your story with us today.
Thank you for having me, Tiisetso.
How have you been?
Wow, that is a very loaded question.
I know. But perhaps then let's start with just like unpacking your story from the beginning so that we don't miss out on anything. Tell us a little bit about Tiisetso. What was your upbringing like? Where were you born and raised? Do you have any siblings? What was your childhood like?
Well, to answer your first question, I'm good.
Great.
So I was born in Vicksburg, a very small town bordering Lesotho, Maputo, Lesotho. I was born to a single mother. I'm an only child. Sure, my upbringing. So for the first couple of years, it was just my mother and I until she got married to my stepfather, hence the surname Rapasa.
Okay.
So I took his surname. When they got married, he legally adopted me. My childhood was quite a journey. So my mother died when I was 13, leaving me alone.
Sure.
Yes. No one else. It was literally just me in Vicksburg.
So at the time, your stepfather was also deceased, or they were not together anymore?
They were no longer together.
Okay.
So towards the end of her life journey, things started to just break apart between the two of them. During that time is when I also found out that he's actually not my biological father. So things were just crumbling, and it was just my mother and I. So my upbringing, sure. On the one side, I would say that I had a really good childhood.
Yeah.
Growing up, I was all about achievement. And I think for the most part of it, that is one thing that really kept me sane, in inverted commas. I was quite the overachiever as far as sports is concerned. Academics, that is one thing that my mom instilled in me for the few years that I had her with me. So before she died, I also had to grow up really quickly because I lost my mom to AIDS. And I lost my mom to AIDS during a time where the stigma around HIV and AIDS was quite intense. And when my mother found out that she was in fact HIV positive, she was in denial. There was no support from her siblings. And I remember there was a time where she in fact did disclose her status to her siblings. And at that time, HIV was looked at something that you can only contract if you're promiscuous. So that sent her into a downward spiral, and she did not take her medication. So as a 12, 13-year-old little girl who literally just hit puberty, I had to also stop being a teen and also become the mother of the house. Because one of the symptoms of full-blown AIDS is that you get dementia. So my mother didn't remember me. So I remember there was a time where she in fact tried to kill me in my sleep, because she thought that I was an intruder in her house. So I literally saw my mother deteriorate in front of me. I had to be the one responsible for cooking, cleaning, literally everything, but also still managing academics and my sports.
And so, I mean, obviously, the access to information and education around what was going on was very limited, especially for a 12-year-old. I mean, 12-year-olds today, they literally have access to Google anything that they want to, ask questions about or find out. How did you then learn step by step what was going on with your mom? And how did you know not to be afraid of her when she had dementia? Because I can imagine the first time when she was like, "Who are you?" it might have been a little bit confusing and somewhat overwhelming. How did you almost educate yourself on what was going on?
So during that time, we actually had sex ed in my school. So HIV being one of the topics. Although I did not know what was exactly wrong with her, I think I was also to a certain extent in denial, thinking that, you know what, my mom is going to get better, people get better, until one day I stumbled upon a page containing her HIV results. And then I found a bag full of pills. During that time, you might remember that they used to take a cocktail of pills, as opposed to today where it's just one pill, or I think most recently it's an injection. A cocktail of pills in the cupboard, tons and tons of condoms as well. So I honestly do not know what type of wisdom God instilled in me at that age, but I put two and two together and realized, you know what, she might have it, and there's nothing I can do.
Sure. And were you able at the time to open up to teachers and friends, given that your family was very hostile towards your mom? What was the conversation like with other structures of support?
No, I did not tell my teachers what was going on. One moment, my mom was the supportive mom who came to all my sporting activities, who went on sport trips with me around the province or around the country. And then the next moment, she's literally a size
bedridden
0 and bedridden, and she's wearing kiddies' clothes. And so that sent me down a very angry path. I think that is when my anger started to
manifest.
It was a really, really, really ugly time. I did not tell anyone. They kind of like saw it for themselves. Vicksburg being small, I think word got around as well. And the school, I think they also realized that it's not something that I want to talk about, but instead continued to support me in everything that I did. So there was never conversation, but instead they just provided me with the necessary tools that I needed at that time, being a 12-year-old, 13-year-old child.
So you continued with school as per normal. You were showing up for school and also at the same time literally being the caretaker at home, looking after your mom, seeing her through her illness. Sure, how did that affect you as a person, and also your ability to just concentrate in class? Because those are the grassroots levels, right? And a lot of time in primary school, there's a big hoo-ha about setting yourself up for high school, and then once you get to high school, you have to set yourself up for varsity. How did that impact you?
Well, let me start by saying that the short time that I had my mom, education was super important for her.
I love that.
So she told me, whatever you do, Wanaka, just make sure that in life you study. Before she died, we literally had a very stringent routine on how, when I get back from sports, it's books. After books, I wash my uniform. After my uniform, I eat. After eating, I study. And that literally just continued. But I also shut down. So with the anger came the shutting down. So it's just something that happens. You know, we also process trauma differently as people. Some people go on a downward spiral where they perhaps get involved with drugs, alcohol, whatever, becoming
The wrong
promiscuous.
crowd.
Yes. I instead just shut down. I had no emotions. It got so bad to an extent where I didn't cry when I saw a casket go down.
Sure.
I spent a lot of that last year also running away sometimes, living with different people. We lived in Zone 7. So
Different people being like friends, or did you find comfort in older people?
So there was a lady who all the neighborhood kids, they saw her as a grandmother. So I would go to her house. She would give me a meal, and she knew what was going on with my mom as well. So her doors were always open for me. I also, at some point, lived with two sisters. They were literally like my older sisters at the time. They would let me sneak into their house at night, have a meal, have a bath, be able to sleep without having to worry about someone who's going to wake up at night crying out in pain.
Sure. That's quite a lot for a 12, 13-year-old to have experienced at such a tender age. But two things stood out for me: that when you first started, you said you had a very happy childhood. I think that's important, and that's some light to hold on to. And the second thing is how passionate your mom was about education. You know, we know that it can only go two ways for especially Black people from small communities, from township communities. It's either your parents invest in you being educated, or they just like, yo, exactly. And at that rate, at that level, you're like, anyway, I'm not going to be here for much longer, so she'll sort herself out. So I'm so glad that she was able to really just pin that in your brain, that education is something that you must pursue. What about the now life without her? So you get into high school. How were you able to navigate the first day of school, high school especially, that kind of milestone? How were you able to navigate that?
So after she passed, you know how Black families are. It was a discussion now. Oh, she doesn't have a father. What are we going to do with her? Where is she going to live? Oh, no, take her to an orphanage. Oh, no, meaning she'll move from house to house. She'll never have stability, basically. Ultimately, my mom's sister decided to take me in. I went to Hoërskool Kroonstad. So I started my high school career in Kroonstad. Still very cold.
Very, like, no emotions,
No
angry,
emotions.
shut
yeah,
down.
Very shut down.
So I can imagine that was also difficult to like form friendships.
Absolutely. I've always had a very difficult time forming friendships. It's either I'm not there or I overly invest. There's like no healthy balance. So, or I cling on to the first speck of affection, rather, that I received from people. Again, for me, I really found comfort in the fact that I was excellent at sports. And I could go to SA level and people would praise me. And those praises are what kept me going. Being on the top 10 is what kept me going. I don't know how, but I did not have the time to feel anything.
Yeah.
I didn't. For me, it was, you need to get to varsity.
So you found a vice because, like you said, other people can turn to addiction, but you decided to turn to your excellence to get you through. And coming towards the end of your high school journey, and now you're at the phase where you realize that, okay, now I'm going to varsity. How did you then come to the decision to study law, to pursue law, and to move out of, Free State?
So I was very fortunate enough to go to schools where the teachers really cared for me. I changed high schools 3 times.
Sure.
Because at the end of grade 8, my aunt kicked me out and I lived on the street.
Sure.
In Vicksburg, yes.
Sure. Like literally on the street. Where was the old lady at that time? Where was your 2 older sisters?
I had lost contact with people.
And there was
at
no
that time.
Sure, we didn't have phone.
No, I had lost contact with
Facebook.
people. The only money I had was enough money to get me to Vicksburg town. When I got to Vicksburg, I went to the following day. I went to my primary school, and I begged them to help me.
This was end of grade 8.
Yes, now I have to start grade 9.
Yeah.
Yes. It's so weird because I actually did a day of grade 9, and then when she came back from work, she decided, you are
This isn't
strange.
working.
Yeah, she literally said to me, you are strange. You are not feeling anything. You're going to kill me. I need you to leave my house.
Black people. Did she have other children?
Yes, she has 2 kids. Yeah.
Sure.
One
the
of which
fear,
you know, actually.
the fear of not understanding that people, fear basically based on not understanding that people go through trauma in different ways. And I guess the expectation was that you would be falling apart. But here you were now just being
not.
strong, being top 10 in grade 8, just being deliberate and diligent in your sports and schooling. And she was expecting you for your life to crumble.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because in grade 8, I was selected to go on a merit tour through the garden route. And she refused to pay for me. And my school said, you know what, you're doing so great academically, we'll take you. She doesn't need to
grade
pay.
8.
Yeah, she just needs to sign, we'll take you. But fast forward, went back to Vicksburg. My primary school then managed to get me into high school. Did a year of grade 9 at Vicksburg High. Kid you not, my aunt came back and took me again.
But now where are you living in grade 9 when your primary school is taking you?
They managed to get me into boarding school.
At Vicksburg High?
Yes.
How long did you then spend at Vicksburg High?
A year.
And then?
My aunt came back and said, you know what, I made a mistake.
And then you went back to Kroonstad?
No, she put me in a different school. And this is where the popo hit the fan because I was the only black person in that school.
Sure.
A small town for Viljoenskroon, where when white people see you walking together, a black child and white kids, it's frowned upon.
Yeah.
They'll even stop their cars like, hey,
what's going on?
What are you doing with that? Yes, went to Viljoenskroon. Still the same story. She dumped me there.
This is now grade 10.
Yes, grade 10. Had to now find my way.
What was her issue at that time?
She can't take care of a girl child. A girl child is just too much for her. And again,
But now you're also dealing with the racism at school and in your community.
Yes, and the racism was so bad that I would sit in class and just feel an object hitting my head or my face.
And you were taught in Afrikaans?
Yes. I studied in Afrikaans from creche. So did that all the way from creche to matric. Yeah, I'd be sitting in class and an object will be hitting you, or they'll pour you with dirty cleaning water,
and the teachers don't intervene.
They would, but it was shame. It was also something new for them to teach a black student. So everyone had to adjust. But again, my brain came through for me, and my talent.
And even towards the end of your year at the school, were there still no other blacks?
No.
Sure.
No.
How did you navigate that?
I worked hard. I made sure that, you know what, if you're going to dislike me and hate me, let there be a reason. Yeah. And you know what I did? I decided to get 90% for Afrikaans home language and become top 1 in the school.
Sure.
And that's exactly what I did.
And
from
now they
grade
hated
10.
you for a
Yes,
reason. But now it's
have a reason.
obviously equally difficult to form friendships because, first of all, it's the race issue. Secondly, you're a very closed individual at this point. Thirdly, you're smart as hell. So nobody wants to be associated with the black smart girl. So you are still very much a lone ranger.
Yes, yes. Things started getting better in grade 11 when they realized that this K-word girl
Is here to
is
stay.
not going anywhere.
Sure.
And now I've now been asked to come and play first team for everything, netball and hockey. So they didn't have a choice. The girls really did warm up to me, and I'm still friends with the ladies till today. They send me pictures of their kids. The one invited me to our house in Potchefstroom. I think it was just a fear thing.
Yeah.
For them, black people, they work in my garden, they work in my house. Never will I be in the same school with a black person.
It's not. She's not our peer.
Exactly.
Sure.
And then comes along this girl. And I took advantage of that because as to how I got into varsity, started doing people's assignments.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they would pay me money. I remember every year we would have engineering, graphic and design project that would take about 6 months to complete. So I was particularly good at drawing. And I would do the classes assignments and charge 500 Rand.
So you, in the 6 months, you managed to do your own project and
Yes.
basically assist other people with their projects
Yes.
too.
And still be a sprinter, play netball and hockey. Yes.
Sure.
So
That
then
is incredible.
I took that money and applied to our city.
And this was now towards, so did you matriculate at that school?
Yes. Yes, I did.
But now at the end of grade 10 or sometime in grade 11, your aunt had kicked you out again. Where were you now staying?
Boarding school.
Oh, there was a boarding school
Yeah.
option. And who was funding that?
The school.
Because you were excellent.
Yes.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
And also there was my aunt was paying at some point. Then she decided to not fund me anymore. And in between that time, I went to my cousin's house. My cousin used to live in a small town called Orkney that's close to Vuyenskreen. And there was one particular incident that made the school realize, you know what, let's just raise this girl. I remember Orkney is about 45 kilometers away from Vuyenskreen. And my aunt who lives in Benoni had actually sent my cousin money to at least buy me food, and so that me being there doesn't affect their groceries and their budget, and also money for me to go back to school. I remember that day it was raining cats and dogs. It was raining, hail, it was bad. Rain in the Free State is something else. It was raining, and I'm getting ready for school, and my cousin says, yeah, you'll just have to see yourself out and see how you get to school. 7 o'clock, I have to be at school at 8. It's raining. You're supposed to take me. Gave me, I think, 100 Rand at the time and told me I'll see myself out. And so I walked. I hiked a truck as a girl.
Sure.
Hiked on a truck. The truck driver dropped me by the entrance of Vuyenskreen. I remember I was so wet that the ink on my books was running. I walked to school, got to school, the receptionist saw me. All she said was, "Aye, Patience." That's my third name, unfortunately.
Patience.
Yes.
Yeah.
She said, "Aye, Patience." My undergarments were wet. Got to school, my books were mushed. And the school just took me and asked me, "What is your story?" Broke down, told the principal everything.
Sure.
From there on, the school was like, you know what? Don't worry about anything. And funny enough, then I got an anonymous sponsor who would sponsor me with toiletries. Oh, that was such a fun time because at that time, Nivea was fancy. Oh, she would buy me everything Nivea, from face to body lotion, roll-on, and then she would add snacks and little Bible verses. She did that until I matriculated.
And you didn't know who that person was?
She didn't want to be known, no.
To this day?
Yes.
Oh, that is
and the
amazing.
boarding school also allowed me to stay on weekends, because the only reason why I went to my cousin's house is because on Fridays you have to go home.
Oh my goodness.
So they allowed me to stay on
So
weekends.
when it's raining like this, it's a Monday morning now. What had happened over the weekend that, like looking back, what happened over the weekend that it was the straw that broke your cousin's back, if I can put it that way?
I think it's, in Black families, sisters-in-law sometimes can just be a thorn unnecessarily. Again, I wouldn't speak unless spoken to. So I was just that quiet child doing my homework, and I don't know why my presence bothered her. And with Sotho people, they have this thing that, what would you say?
Sure.
Orphans are the same. They're all gonna end up the same. So according to
Basically putting a curse on your life.
Yes. So according to my mom's family, I was supposed to contract HIV, have kids, out of wedlock, and die.
Sure.
So I really, till this day, I really don't understand what the issue was at that time. Funny enough, we have the best relationship today. So that Monday, that's what happened. And the school then just catered for me. I didn't lack anything. I was quite happy. I could do my sports, everything. On the weekends, granted, I'd be alone in the boarding school. They'd make sure that I have meals, put everything in these industrial fridges, give me access to the kitchen. I just warm up and eat my food and carry on with life. And that's how I finished high school. As to what inspired me to apply for law.
Oh, yes.
was
that's where we were going.
Yes.
This hectic, yeah.
It's actually a lot to unpack, so it's so difficult for me to just get to a straight answer. But my childhood, my mom struggled to get a divorce from my stepdad.
Sure.
Running around from this court to that court, I just think a lack of information or access to information, access to a lawyer, or actually understanding the laws around divorce. They were married in community of property. She struggled to divorce the man, and she died still married to him. And just what happened around me, with me, my aunt also making it such a huge deal, like to adopt me, like making it seem like it's so difficult to adopt someone. The processes are so stringent. I mean, granted, they're stringent, but I'm pretty sure if you really wanted to adopt me,
you would have. The same aunt who kept kicking you out.
Yes. And really just the injustices in my communities, the community, domestic violence.
Yeah.
A lot of orphans. So that really, for me, I just saw that people in my community don't have access to the law. They don't have access to the right type of legal advice. They don't know the questions to ask. And even if you know the questions to ask, law
are you
or
able
access
to take the
law
next step?
It's not affordable. It wasn't affordable at that time to have access to a lawyer and someone who can give you sound advice. And then when I got to grade 10, I suppose my writing skills and I had a teacher, Mr. Stander. He actually is the one, I owe it to him, he's the one who got me out of my shell because my writing skills were impeccable in Afrikaans. So he was super impressed.
Sure.
He actually dared me to do orators. So funny, the other day I was packing my certificates, came across my Ate Kafir certificates. It's a society for Afrikaans orators and debaters. And they awarded me all these different certificates for public speaking and orators and all of that. He got me out of my shell. And then eventually he had a discussion with me. He said, Patience, you speak well, you write well. You're very passionate about everything that you do. Have you considered rechtsgeleerdheid?
Sure.
Which is law. And at the time, I didn't even know what I wanted to study, but I knew that I needed to study. I didn't know what I wanted to study in grade 10. When I thought about it and looked at my life, why not? Why not? So grade 11 marks came out. They were fantastic. I think my average at the time was 88. And then I applied to WITS, applied to NWU in Boch. Don't ask me why. I applied to UJ. Got a very beautiful letter from WITS. I remember about a month later, them praising me about my achievements and my results and how much they would be happy to accommodate me in WITS Law School. So I suppose matric was just a formality for me.
Sure. I love that.
Yeah.
Just a formality.
So,
And then how, just moving to, okay, now you have to move to Joburg. You have, not so much support from your family, not necessarily the greatest of relationships, but you now need to make Jimmy goes to Joburg, move. Tell me a little bit about that, the experience, and once again, navigating this new big town, being in varsity with people from all sorts of backgrounds. How did you manage to really just immerse yourself into that new journey?
So I would say that my family members, it's almost as if they wanted to become involved at certain stages of my life because once I graduated, once I matriculated rather, and got the 5 distinctions, my uncle.
There was a bit of noise around you now.
Now I am, did you see Tiisetso? Tiisetso got accepted to WITS. Because I got accepted to WITS even before I got my results.
Sure.
Yeah, because I think Uma Lucy, he have been out of school for so long. Uma Lucy had not released the results, but WITS got the results. And immediately I'm getting a message, great honor, we're accepting you into WITS Law School. Now I'm a big deal. My aunt and uncle stay here in Benoni. They took me in. And shame, in their defense, they did try to support while I was still in Fuyensgreen. After that, found out that my other aunt is delusional and going through her own things. So they took me. They started the journey of varsity with me. I was at their house and they had the conversation with me that you go into varsity. Listen, please don't make a baby.
Yeah.
Please don't make a baby. You know where you come from. And we'd like to believe that you know where you're going. Please don't make a baby.
Sure.
They held my hand, went to go register. I didn't have to pay registration because of my marks, thank goodness. Held my hand, put me in South Point, bought me groceries. And they were like, okay, Osi, this is the beginning of your life.
And then were they able to maintain that throughout your varsity life? Or at some point did you stay at school?
Every now and again. I stayed at South Point for the first year. The second year, they were not able to assist. So now I had to again.
How was your performance though, academics-wise?
I made Dean's List. I was awarded the Dean's List Award. And I was also inducted into the Golden Key International Society. So,
what did that mean on a monetary level?
It meant that if I go and ask the law school for funding, they would give it to me, which later on they actually did fund my studies.
From what, third year?
That was third year and fourth year. Second year, I remember I registered late. I think I registered about 2 months late. Had to speak to the registrar, I believe, to just allow me to register late. Got a student loan. But here is the trick to everything, the spanner in the wheels, is that that money never made its way to varsity.
I'm lost. So you were the applicant. You were the one applying for these funds.
But remember, I needed to have a surety to sign for the loan.
Yes.
So the surety happened to be very same uncle.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So what the bank did is that they paid my registration directly to the university.
Mm-hmm.
And then they gave me a laptop. And after that, it would seem that the agreement was varied and the funds
Never made it.
to Wits.
So how did you make the rest of the year?
I didn't know that my funds were not paid. So I just went
So
to
you
school as
continued.
per normal. Yeah. My rent was being paid, but also it would be paid after some time. And so I would end up with evictions quite a lot during the course of the year. And then I was at home. I remember waiting for my results to come out. Everyone is going on the portal. I think it was the CLM portal.
Oh, yes. Now yours aren't reflecting.
Now it's blocked. Like, what do you mean? Now I had to investigate, become Sherlock Holmes and investigate what in the world happened because my fees are paid. What do you mean? I need to find out that my
And how did you overcome that? What was then the solution to ensure that you'd at least be able to go back to do your third year?
Well, the family had to come together and ensure that they fix the mess. That was not my responsibility because I had performed well yet again. So it was not my fault and I should not be burdened with other people's decisions.
So they ended up, your family fixed that mess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Third year comes.
Like, I have a headache.
Yes. Third year comes, I have no plan. And this is when I was like, you know what, baby girl, you know how to hustle. Went to law school. And I think at that time it was Professor Mohango who was still at law school. And Jaishant was the dean. What was he? Head of law school, something. Went to them, requested a meeting, went to the meeting, took my transcripts. They knew that I'm on the dean's list. I'm on Golden Key. And I told them, this is the situation. I need funding. I want to become a lawyer. I need to finish this degree. What can you do for me? Really, the worst answer that you can get in life is a no. That's literally, that's the worst thing that a person can say. And that's the mindset that I had. And they said yes. They funded my studies. They gave me an allowance of 3,500 rand. And they funded my accommodation. So I was sorted for third year.
And then fourth year?
And then during third year, I got a job as a cleaner at Spur.
Okay.
Yes, to get more money.
Yeah.
I was obsessed
Yeah.
with money. So I was a cleaner at Spur. Now I had saved up money as well for registration as well because the funding was only for a year. Did relatively well in third year, but obviously not like second year and first year. Went to the school and asked them, listen, can you please fund me for my final year? Said, okay, we'll fund you for your studies, accommodation. You're going to have to sort yourself out. Okay, that's fine. That's better than nothing, right?
Yeah.
So one day as I was cleaning at Spur in Bromfontein, so hungry. I remember that day, went on my phone on Facebook, I saw a post. They were looking for promo girls. Took the chance. I remember I went to Hyde Park, got there. The brief was for us to work for Prestige. Prestige was they were promoting luxury fragrances like your Elisab and your Esemiyake and all of that. Gave us a brief. We had to now show them how we would sell the brand. Oh, English came through for the girl. Took the little pamphlet, showed them how I would sell, got the job, 7.5 in the bag, could pay for my rent for the year as a promo girl. During the course of the year, also got funding from the Law Society. Yes. At that time. I think they gave me 7.5. Also still better than nothing.
I wasn't even aware that the Law Society has those kind of funds.
Yes,
That's
it
very
was
interesting.
Law Society, or was it? Yes, it's the Law Society, yes. Gave me 7.5. And I finished
and then you got through fourth year.
My final year, yes, got through.
Sure.
My final year, well, Didn't make it on Dean's list in final year, but
Hey, you'd been through a
I
lot.
just needed to finish.
You just needed to finish, yeah.
And another great thing for me is that I also did my VAC work at the firm. And then they offered me, finished the VAC work on Friday, they offered me the Monday. So now I could breathe a little.
Yeah.
Because now at least I've secured employment for the next 2 years. So the rest
So
of the final
during
year.
your 4th year, okay, I think one thing that I want to say is that just through everything that you've been telling me and sharing with us is the word grace. Grace, which has always managed to locate you. Are you aware of that, or like what do you believe has always been at play in your life and in your story?
God.
God's grace.
Yeah, when people ask me, how did you make it? I say, well, God.
Yeah.
I honestly feel like I was raised by God.
Because it reads and sounds like a movie. Like,
I've been in terrible situations.
Yeah.
I've been in such terrible situations. Certain things did happen, and we can't blame God for that. But He carried me through. He really did. I think He wrote my book, and He knew what He was doing. Like He carried me.
yeah.
It's actually quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sure. What did I want to ask now? So during your 4th year, you didn't you were not going through the stress of applying for articles. You just literally just did your VAC work at this one firm, finished on Friday. They said, okay, Monday, here you
Yes.
go, you're sorted. So you
Yes.
never went through the stress of
I went through the
putting
normal
together
stress.
CVs and
I did
just
in second year. I went through the stress in second year because you know how in varsity they like to tell you that the big 5 is the all or nothing.
Yeah.
That if you don't end up in the big 5, you're not going to amount to anything. I was on a craze in my second year trying to get into the big 5, and I didn't get into the big 5, which is another thing that
even with all your
with good marks,
accomplishments, that is interesting.
Yeah, you.
It just wasn't
it's not
your
for
story.
you. Yes,
Yeah.
it wasn't for me.
It was not
and
your
I'm
story.
grateful that it actually happened that way. Third year, I just decided to focus. I think for me, I knew that I needed to do my articles, but for me, the main goal was to finish this degree. I need to finish this degree in record time.
And I'm sure you're not the only one, and I'm sure there are listeners out there who are also just very hell-bent on the fact that they have to make it into the top 5. And the reality is that in a pool of so many graduates, even if you're excellent, Dean's List, Golden Key, all of that, we're not all going to go to a top 5 law firm. And that's the reality.
Yes.
And how did you just let go of that? Like, how did you manage to bring yourself to a point where you're like, you know what, let me try something else?
Look, like you say, not all of us are going to get into the top 5. They also have limited spaces. So I needed to decide, do I want to become an attorney or do I want to get into the top 5 firms?
Yeah.
Because I could go sit at home and wait for one day until I get into
An
Bowman's
unknown
or
day.
whatever.
Yeah.
Or I could go and do my articles, learn as much as I can, and then
Take it from
navigate this road as an attorney.
Yeah.
So I just had to disassociate myself. I saw people getting articles in the big 5, and it did hurt, but you know, you must always remember what it is that you want in life. And what I wanted was the degree. I want to finish it in record time, and I need to get a job because I'm alone.
Yeah.
That's all I needed.
Yeah.
Whether if it was in the top 5, then amazing. But also, I want people to remember that just because you don't make it into the top 5 doesn't make you less great. Also,
And I think another thing I wanted to ask you is that in your, let's say your teen years, your later teen years, as somebody who is attending a prestigious university like Wits, how did you manage to just remove, I actually want to say shame, because that's how people perceive certain occupations. How did you manage to like block out the noise and say, the only gig that I'm able to get a spur right now is that of a cleaner? in a world where people banyata, such roles, what's hunyata in English? Take advantage or undermine and really look down on those kind of roles. How did you manage to block out the noise even from, your peers and be confident enough to say, I'm going to work, I'm going to get money to fund my studies, and I'm just blocking out the noise?
It's either you go to sleep hungry. That's the choice that you have. You go to sleep hungry because you don't want people to know
that this is what I'm doing.
Oh, I'm working at Spur as a cleaner. Or you go to work and you have a meal.
Sure.
That's really that
That's
simple.
what it boiled down to.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did not care. Also, again, I didn't have a lot of people in my life.
And options.
Yes.
And options.
I mean, I did look for waitering gigs. I didn't get them. And the only thing that Spur could offer me at that time was to be a cleaner. And that time, you're already going to work, you're hungry, and now you can see them grilling all these ribs and everything. You are super hungry, you're starving. But now I needed to decide, am I going to care about what people are saying, or am I going to do what I need to do to get what I need to get?
And that role as a cleaner at Spur, how did that actually pour into your role as, a CA and even your current role today? Because nothing is for nothing, right? And every environment we step into has a skill set, whatever it is that it teaches us. What are some of the things that you can say you've been consistent about when it comes to your work ethic from the time that you were doing a role such as cleaning to now being literally General Counsel for a multinational company?
Don't undermine where you are, or don't belittle where you are. Always remain humble. That is something that I carried through from that role. I was a law student. Yes, I was a law student at Wits.
Yeah.
And now I am cleaning at Spur. That really, it really teaches you to be humble.
Yeah.
And with everything that you do, whether it's cleaning or whether it's being a general counsel, do it to the best of your ability and always remain humble. And gratefulness. You just need to be grateful for the opportunity because they could have said no. And what was I going to do?
Sure. Now with a focus on your career in law, I mean, that is what the podcast is about, but it's actually equally about sharing your journey. I feel like you've actually had an experience with everything, being an only child, being the only Black person in a school, being a top achiever, and all of that. But once you got to past varsity and into work, I'm obviously now accounting for the parts that I was there. You seemed to be doing a bit better in terms of even your people skills, opening up to people, and really just, I mean, I know you as a friendly person. I wouldn't say you're closed. Definitely a stinking attitude. But very friendly and very affectionate, very loving, very kind, always willing to help. When did you just start coming out of just being closed and not wanting to really forge friendships and just being a cold person?
The people that I met along my journey, I think you being one of the people, that really did ring a bell in my head for, hey, not everyone is out to get you.
Yeah.
And one remarkable thing that actually happened during my articles, I don't know how the brain works, but it's like my brain kind of like took the decision on my behalf that, hey, we're no longer in survival mode. We can now relax. And guess what happened? I broke down.
I can imagine.
I had my first breakdown. And you know why I cried? I broke down. It was a severe a proper mental breakdown, and to an extent where I actually had to research on mental health. Broke down because my mom's not here.
Sure.
She had been gone for so long.
And you had been on survival mode for so long.
Yeah. that breakdown was very necessary.
Yeah.
Because with the breakdown, you obviously, what people can see that your demeanor has changed. What's going on? Talk to us. And now you have to it's either you learn to trust people and get burnt and get over it,
Or continue being
on
a
the path
prisoner
that you're on. Yeah.
to
your trauma.
trauma and circumstances. Yo.
So I think during my articles, I was really fortunate to actually meet people who were genuine. Although there were some shady characters, but to meet people who were genuine, people who were caring, people who would be kind to me, and for the first time I could experience kindness without any ulterior motives. Could experience someone having a genuine interest in me and wanting to see me grow.
That's me, by the way. I should throw that in there.
Okay, just for information. It was definitely a learning exercise. For instance, I look at my daughter now and I always say to my husband, sure, my daughter is the person that I wish I was growing up. She's confident. She is outspoken. She does not care if you don't speak to her. She will speak to you. She is everything that I wish I could have been.
Sure.
And honestly, I really just owe it up to the people that I met along my path. You can see now, I'm still talking to you how many years later? You see.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that helped me, investing in my mental health.
Sure. A lot of the time on the show or on platforms that I speak on, I always say that even then, it's not that long ago, but even then, the conversation around mental health wasn't something that, firstly, I don't know if we had a term for it, and secondly, once we identified what was wrong, I don't know if we could identify the people who we could open up to, who could help us. So for the most part, it was actually still a lonely journey, and you really had to do the work on yourself, with yourself, by yourself.
And it's daunting.
And it's such a taxing exercise, having to be there for yourself, not knowing that this is a conversation that we can have with people openly. And just learning today from you, I realized that for the most part in life, we really do live in duality, because we were always able to show up to work regardless of our circumstances. We were always seeing flames. And at the time, it was always like it's work flames. But in our own lives, we were battling so much and just fighting so many demons. And for the most part, really just having a tumultuous young adulthood.
Yes.
It's always been a lot.
It's
always been a lot. It has really always been a lot. What are some of the challenges that you experienced during your articles? Was there ever a moment where you found yourself wondering, what the hell am I doing here? And just doubting your competence. I mean, I know as candidates, our competence is limited, but what were some of the challenges that you faced that really, really tested you?
Racism.
Sure. From someone who was an only black child, you should have come and given us the manifesto, or I don't know.
I know, but also in your mind, you're like, when does it end? Racism was a big one for me. And with racism comes just people having no interest in you. And now you are sitting there, fresh out of varsity. You are eager to learn, you are eager to work, and you're literally coming to work to come and drink coffee.
Sure.
Surely, this is not what articles should be. Favoritism, did I mention? Favoritism. Favoritism was one of the big things. Toxicity.
Sure.
The level of toxicity, it's also one of the biggest challenges in the legal profession, that we think to build, in order for you to build a great attorney, you need to be so harsh and hard and break them down. It's not necessary. You really don't need to be an ugly person in order for you to mold an incredible attorney.
Sure, that is so true.
So for the first 3 months, I remember, I don't know if you recall that you used to give me a trademark instruction.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I did. Because I felt like I can't come to work and not do anything. And I remember you'd say to me, just do the 2 years and write your boards and leave. That's really why
that
you're
was
here.
the plan.
Like,
Look, I committed to the plan. I did say.
And in hindsight, like really, I could have done that. But I also wanted to learn.
I remember at some point saying, I went home that day and I was like, I cannot believe I still have a year and 11 months left. Like in month 1 already, I was like, what am I going to do? So honestly, that is what kept me going. Put your head down, do your 2 years, get admitted. What is that the same thing that kept you going? Just...
Yeah, you constantly in my ear telling me to just do it and get it over and done with.
Yeah,
that really did help me.
Because changing and moving and trying to seed articles and trying to start again and trying to...
I was not
sometimes
going to do that.
That's not practical. Yeah.
I was definitely not going to do that. I really did take to your advice and I did the 2 years. And fortunately, I was able to go to a different department. And in that department, it was going down.
Sure.
And in that department, I could say really did mold the attorney that I am today. Oh goodness, by the time I left that law firm, I was suffering from such bad insomnia because all I could think about is the fact that I need to brief counsel and now I have an urgent application and now this person is disconnected.
It never stops.
Oh, and they're calling you at 4 a.m. Hi, Tiisetso, can you please do this? But I am so grateful for that because I could have sat there for the 2 years and leave there knowing diddly squat.
Yeah, that's so true.
I took that in.
So what I'm getting is that you just had to take matters into your own hand, which is, I think, something that's very important for us to do as especially young Black girls entering the profession. If you're not getting the work, you just really have to take initiative and take the steering wheel. Don't allow things to happen to you. You need to be in the driver's seat and really just go out of your way to get the work.
Already there's so much working against you. You're Black and you're female.
And at that time, you're relatively young. I mean, we're still relatively young. So how did you then decide that practice wasn't for you? And I'm just going to sort of squash that into like 5 minutes if we can, because time is no longer on our side. What was the deciding factor that practice is no longer for me? I'm going to pursue in-house and commit to in-house.
I've always had a really deep yearning for family. I've just heard a snippet of my life story. I've always wanted a family, and I knew that if I continued the way on the path that I'm on, with doing urgents day in, day out, I'm not going to make it. I'll probably make it, but at what expense? I knew that I wanted to be a present mother,
and
a present wife.
And you don't want to sacrifice family.
And I don't want to sacrifice the little bit of brain that I have left after the trauma that I have endured. So I decided, no, this is not for me. Not downplaying corporate at all. In-house is another monster on its own. But at least I am still able to go out for a coffee and come and talk to you.
And be there for your children, and be there with your
kids.
Husband, and really be family oriented.
Exactly.
Look, and that's something that you grew up without, no doubt.
It's So definitely my life is well balanced now. I've got the things that I need. Obviously things are not perfect. We're working towards it. But I think I'm better off being in corporate, being a general counsel, being exposed to everything as opposed to being in practice specializing. There are ladies who love it, who are wearing the multiple hats, and that's great. That works for them. But it would not have worked for me. The level, the effort that I put into that and the fatigue that I experienced after that was not going to be my life.
Sure. All right. And in maybe 1 or 2 sentences, if there's somebody who's young out there listening to today's story, given what you've been through, what you've experienced, what you know, and where you are today, what is that one thing that you can just say to comfort them and let them know that, they should let the journey play out, but it does end in happiness?
I think you've said it.
Sure.
Circumstance really is so temporary. So temporary.
And it doesn't feel like it when you're in it.
When you're in it,
Yeah.
it feels like you're being burnt alive. But I promise you, it gets better. I promise you it gets better. And you should always remember that you are the result of your own efforts.
Sure. Yeah.
If you're not going to put in the effort, nothing's going to happen. I could have easily have sat in a corner and cried. But I did not. Thank you and praise God for that. But really, circumstance is temporary and your efforts will always show. Whether it shows in a year, whether it shows in 10 years, it will show.
Stay the course.
Yes.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing such a vulnerable part of your life with us. I think it was a very important conversation. As you may have realized, I didn't even touch on most of the questions that I wanted to ask you, which were very much built around your career. But at the end of the day, the foundations of who we are in our professional roles are really determined by our backstory.
Absolutely.
Right? So obviously today it was important for us to focus on the backstory, but just keep it at the back of your mind that I owe you a day where you come and share more on your career.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but thank you so much for being so vulnerable with us. I'm sure there's somebody out there who is feeling a little bit relieved after hearing your story and seeing the beautiful flower that you ended up blooming into. Thank you so much for your time and just honestly and openly sharing your story with us. I can see that you are definitely a grown woman and a better person. And that craziness during articles, it makes sense now. Been through a lot.
It's been a lot.
But yeah, I mean, I've learned more today than the time we spent together during our articles, but it obviously makes sense that there are just parts that you are not ready to share. So I see the growth and I'm very proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. At home, sure, today was quite intense. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'm reminding you once more, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share this podcast with your loved ones. And most importantly, please engage with us on all our social media platforms. I can be found under Bells Mthembu or under Sister-in-Law across all platforms. See you on the next episode.